The blood was still wet on the hospital floor when they took my baby from my arms. My husband watched. His mistress smiled. And my best friend of 15 years, she was counting the money they paid her to destroy me. I was 8 months pregnant when I discovered the affair. But that was not the betrayal that shattered me. It was the psychiatric facility they locked me in. The forged documents that said I was insane. The 72 hours I had to prove I was fit to be a mother, while they erased every trace of my existence. They stole my money. They stole my lawyer. They stole my newborn daughter. And they thought I would stay broken. They were wrong, because there was something they did not know about me. Something even I had forgotten. My father, the man who had not spoken to me in 7 years, was not just some deadbeat who abandoned his family. He was the federal prosecutor who put their grandfather in prison. And he had been watching, waiting, planning, for exactly this moment. The lesson. This story will teach you the 7 warning signs of a predatory partner, how to protect yourself before the trap closes, and why the women who survive are never the ones who stayed silent. The meaning. This is not just entertainment. This is a survival guide disguised as a story. Every twist you hear today is based on real tactics that predators use. Every piece of advice woven into this narrative could save your life, your children, or someone you love. By the end of this story, you will know exactly how to document abuse, protect your assets, and fight back against a system designed to silence you. The last thing I saw before they sedated me was my husband signing papers to give our baby to his mistress. She was standing in my delivery room, wearing the perfume I bought him for Christmas, and my father, the man who had not spoken to me in 7 years, was walking through the door. But I am getting ahead of myself. 3 hours ago, I was making dinner. I thought my biggest problem was whether to tell my husband I had found the pregnancy test hidden in his gym bag. It was not mine. My name is Melissa Porter. I am 34 years old. I work the night shift at a nursing home. And in the next 72 hours, I am going to lose my baby, my home, my freedom, and every person I ever trusted. But here is what they did not know. My father is not just some deadbeat who abandoned me. He is the man who put 3 federal judges in prison. And he has been watching for 7 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Before I tell you how I survived, I need you to understand something. Everything I am about to share, the red flags I missed, the traps I fell into, the moves that saved my life, these are not just story elements. They are a survival manual. By the end of this story, you will know exactly how predators isolate their victims, how to protect yourself before you need to, and why the women who escape are never the ones who stayed quiet. Stay until the end. The person who saved me was not who I expected, and neither was the person who betrayed me. Let me take you back to where it all started. A Tuesday morning, in October, a gym bag that should have stayed closed. I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted from another 12-hour shift at Shady Pines nursing home, and I was looking for my husband, Derek's, protein powder. The one I hide vegetables in because he eats like a 12-year-old who won Super Bowl tickets to the snack aisle. Our apartment was small, 2 bedrooms in a working-class neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. The check engine light in my 2009 Honda Civic had been on for 3 months. We had $847 in savings and about $12,000 in credit card debt. Most of that debt was Derek's. I was digging through his gym bag when my fingers touched something that was not protein powder, a small, rectangular box. I pulled it out, and my heart stopped. A pregnancy test. For 3 beautiful, stupid seconds, I thought maybe I was having twins. Maybe the doctor missed one. Maybe this was a good surprise. Then I saw the date on the box. It was purchased 2 weeks ago. I was already 7 months pregnant. I did not need to take pregnancy tests anymore. Someone else did. My hands started shaking as I kept searching the bag. A receipt from a jewelry store, $3,400 for a necklace. We could not afford our electric bill, but Derek had $3,400 for jewelry I had never seen. And then a hotel keycard. The Marquise downtown. The date on the receipt was our anniversary. The night Derek said he was working late. I sat down on our bed, surrounded by evidence of my husband's other life, and I made myself breathe. Here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. When you find evidence, your first instinct is to confront. Do not. I know it feels impossible. Your hands are shaking, your heart is pounding. You want answers right now. But the moment you reveal what you know, you lose your only advantage. They start covering tracks. They start building stories. They start planning. I made myself wait. I put everything back exactly where I found it. I took photos with my phone. I created a new email account. Not Gmail, not Yahoo, something he would never guess. Proton Mail. It is encrypted. Then I went to work my shift like nothing was wrong. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, and it saved my life. You need to understand why I was so vulnerable, why a woman who should have known better walked right into a trap that had been building for years. My father, Richard Crane, was a federal prosecutor, the kind who put powerful people in prison, the kind who made enemies. When I was 17, my mother gave him an ultimatum. Your job or your family. He chose the job. Or so I believed. He left, and I spent the next 17 years hating him for it. My mother died of cancer when I was 22. She died bitter and alone, blaming Richard for everything. I married Derek at 25. He swept in during my grief like a knight in shining armor. He was attentive. He remembered the little things. He made me feel safe. What I did not know was that I was not his soulmate. I was his target. Derek convinced me to quit my better-paying hospital job. Too stressful for the baby, he said. He moved me away from my hometown to Columbus. A fresh start, he said. He cut me off from everyone I knew. By the time I got pregnant, my entire support system consisted of my husband, my coworker Jenna, who thought crystals cure cancer, and my neighbor Tammy, who was convinced her cat was her reincarnated grandmother. My therapist once asked me to describe my support system. I told her about Jenna and Tammy. She just wrote something down and said, "We will work on that." We never got the chance. For 3 days, I investigated my husband like he was a case file. I was a certified nursing assistant, not a detective, but I knew how to pay attention. I knew how to find patterns. I checked our joint account, $340 withdrawn every week from an ATM near a condo complex I had never heard of. I checked our credit card, charges at baby boutiques, prenatal vitamins. I bought mine at Dollar General. I checked Find My Friends on my phone. Derek had forgotten I had access. His location showed him regularly at 1847 Maple Creek Drive. On my day off, I drove to that address. I parked across the street and waited. Derek's truck was in the driveway. I watched for 20 minutes, my heart pounding, telling myself there had to be an explanation. Then the front door opened. A woman walked out, beautiful, blonde, very pregnant. Derek followed her. He kissed her goodbye. He rubbed her belly, the same way he rubbed mine. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. He was wearing a different wedding ring. I sat in my car and watched my husband leave his other family, his other pregnant wife, his other life, and I realized something that broke me. He was not just cheating. He was replacing me. The jewelry, the prenatal vitamins, the baby boutiques. Those were not for a mistress. They were for his upgrade. I went home. I found her on Instagram. Brittany Wells, 28 years old, 12,000 followers. Hashtag blessed life. She worked at Derek's construction company as the office manager. Her Instagram was full of photos with her amazing fiancé. Derek's face was always cropped out. She was 6 months pregnant, conceived while I was in my first trimester. I spent 3 hours scrolling through her Instagram. 3 hours I will never get back. Her bio said, "Living my best life with my soulmate." Sweetie, your soulmate spent last Tuesday night rubbing my feet and complaining about his difficult client. I was the difficult client. Actually, no. I was the product being phased out. I should have waited. I should have gathered more evidence. I should have called a lawyer, found a safe place to go, told someone outside my circle what was happening. Instead, I did exactly what Derek was counting on. I confronted him. Derek came home that evening at 6:30, same as always. He kissed my forehead, same as always. He asked what was for dinner, same as always. I threw the photos on the kitchen table. The pregnancy test, the jewelry receipt, the hotel key card, screenshots of Brittany's Instagram. I expected tears. I expected apologies. I expected him to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness. Instead, Derek smiled. "Oh, Mel," he said, and his voice was different, colder. "I was wondering when you would figure it out." He did not apologize. He did not deny it. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "She knows," he said. "We are doing it tonight." Within 1 hour, 2 police officers were standing in my living room. They had a wellness check report filed by Derek claiming I had threatened suicide. They had screenshots of text messages I had never sent, threatening to hurt myself and my baby. Derek showed them pill bottles he had found hidden in my dresser, bottles I had never seen before. "Mrs. Porter," one officer said, "we need you to come with us, just for an evaluation. 72 hours. Make sure you and the baby are safe." I tried to explain. I tried to show them the evidence on my phone. I tried to tell them about Brittany, about the other apartment, about the other life. Derek shook his head sadly. "This is what I was afraid of," he told the officers. "The paranoia, the delusions. She has been getting worse for months." I need to stop the story here and tell you something critical. In most states, your spouse can request an emergency psychiatric evaluation. They do not need your consent. They just need a doctor willing to sign an evidence of instability. If you are planning to leave an abusive partner, do not confront them until you have a safe place to go. Copies of all financial documents, a trusted person who knows your plan, and evidence stored somewhere they cannot access. I had none of these things. I confronted Derek in my own home, alone, with no escape plan. That mistake almost cost me everything. They took me to Riverside Behavioral Health Center, a squat brick building surrounded by chain link fencing that looked like a prison dressed up as a hospital. They took my phone. They took my purse. They took my clothes and gave me gray scrubs. I was 7 months pregnant, locked in a psychiatric facility, and no one who could help me knew where I was. The doctor assigned to my case was named Nathan Reeves. Mid-40s, graying hair, sympathetic eyes. He seemed kind at first. He seemed like he wanted to help. "Mrs. Porter," he said during our first session, "tell me what happened." I told him everything. The pregnancy test, the Instagram photos, Derek's other apartment, his other pregnant girlfriend, his secret life. Dr. Reeves listened patiently. He took notes. He nodded in all the right places. Then Derek arrived with more evidence. A journal, leather-bound, filled with disturbing entries about harming myself and my baby. The handwriting looked exactly like mine. I have never seen that journal in my life. "Asibanan mas," I said. Dr. Reeves made a note. "The denial is concerning," he said softly. "Mrs. Porter, Your husband loves you very much. He is trying to get you help. I sat in that white room, in those gray scrubs, and I understood something that made me want to scream. They had not just been having an affair, they had been building a case. Every fight Derek had started, every time he had pushed me until I yelled, he was collecting ammunition. Every moment I had complained to Jenna about being tired, about feeling overwhelmed. Somehow they knew. The trap had not been springing for hours. It had been building for months. And I had walked right into it. Day 2 of my psychiatric hold. I had not slept. I had not eaten. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to prove I was not crazy when every piece of evidence said otherwise. Then Jenna came to visit. My coworker. My closest friend. The woman I had trusted with every complaint about my marriage, every fear about becoming a mother, every moment of doubt. I grabbed her hands through the visiting room table. Jenna, thank God. You have to help me. Call someone. Get me out of here. Derek is framing me. Jenna's face was full of pity, but it was the wrong kind of pity. Mel, she said softly, I am so sorry. I did not want it to be like this. Did not want what to be like this. She would not meet my eyes. Derek came to me 6 months ago. He was so worried about you. The mood swings, the paranoia, the way you had become obsessed with checking his phone. Because he was cheating, I said. He told me you would say that. She shook her head. He told me you would have an explanation for everything. That is what the doctor said to watch for. Signs of delusional thinking. I stared at my friend, my only friend, and I realized she was not here to help me. She was here to say goodbye. Here is a truth that is going to hurt. Abusers do not just manipulate you. They manipulate everyone around you. They plant seeds early. I am worried about her. She has been acting strange. I do not know what to do. By the time you try to tell your side, everyone has already heard his version. They have already decided you are the problem. Document everything. But more importantly, tell someone outside your shared social circle. Someone he does not know. Someone he cannot reach. I did not have that person. Until I remembered I did. That night, alone in my room, I made a decision. My father and I had not spoken in 7 years. I had ignored every letter, every phone call, every attempt he made to reconnect. But lying in that psychiatric bed, my baby kicking against ribs that felt like they might crack, I finally asked myself a question I had never allowed before. What if I did not know the whole story? What if the letter I threw away was the answer I needed right now? I convinced a sympathetic night nurse to let me make one phone call. Just one. I dialed my father's number from memory. I had never forgotten it, even after all these years. He answered on the first ring, at 2 in the morning, like he had been waiting. Melissa, he said, thank God. I know where you are. Dad? I whispered into the phone, how do you know where I am? Because I have been investigating Derek Porter for 2 years, my father said. His voice cracked with emotion. Mel, I need you to listen carefully. Derek is not who you think he is. He has done this before. 3 times. 3 women, 3 babies. And the woman helping him? Brittany Wells? Her real name is Brittany Reeves. She is the daughter of the psychiatrist who has you locked up right now. The room seemed to spin around me. I grabbed the edge of the nurse's station to steady myself. That is impossible, I said. I wish it were. My father's voice was grim. Nathan Reeves and his daughter Brittany have been running this scheme for almost a decade. Brittany targets married men with pregnant wives. She seduces them, gets pregnant, creates evidence that the wife is unstable. Dr. Reeves commits the wife, ensuring custody goes to the husband. Once the wife is discredited, they divorce, drain the assets, and Brittany moves on to the next target. I felt sick. How many women? That I can confirm? 4. Laura Mitchell in 2019. She is still in a long-term care facility. Mary Sanders in 2021. She was convicted of fraud based on fabricated evidence. Angela Morrison in 2022. She signed over everything and disappeared. No one has seen her since. And me. And you. I pressed my free hand against my belly, feeling my daughter kick. Why? Why would Derek do this? Money. My father's voice hardened. You told me when you got married that Derek had some credit card debt. What you did not know was that he owed over $300,000 to people you do not want to owe money to. He was desperate when Brittany found him. She offered him a way out. All he had to do was marry someone vulnerable and help them destroy her. I closed my eyes, remembering how Derek had swept into my life right after my mother died. How perfect he had seemed. How safe. He targeted me, I said, from the beginning. I am so sorry, Mel. I spent 17 years staying away from you because I knew my enemies would use you to hurt me. I thought distance would protect you. Instead, it made you vulnerable. Wait. I opened my eyes. Your enemies? What do you mean? There was a long pause. There is something else you need to know. The judge assigned to your custody case. His name is Harold Reeves. I felt the blood drain from my face. Reeves? As in Dr. Reeves? His brother. My father's voice was heavy. 20 years ago, I put their father in prison. Federal corruption case. He died there. The Reeves family has been waiting for revenge ever since. You are saying this whole thing, Derek, Brittany, everything, was revenge on you? I am saying I made enemies in my career. I am saying those enemies found you. And I am saying that I should have warned you instead of staying away. For the first time, I understood why my father left. Not because he did not love me, because he loved me too much to risk it. And somehow, they found me anyway. Listen to me carefully, my father said. Dr. Reeves is going to recommend extending your hold. He is going to keep you locked up until the baby comes. Then they are going to take her. What do I do? Play along. Do whatever Dr. Reeves says. Act calm, cooperative, grateful. Your only goal right now is to get released from that facility. I have people gathering evidence. We are going to take them down. But I need you to buy us time. How much time? 3 days. Maybe 4. I might not have that long. Then we work fast. The next morning, I had my second evaluation with Dr. Reeves. I did everything my father told me. I was calm, cooperative, rational. I admitted to overreacting. I blamed pregnancy hormones. I thanked Derek for getting me help. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I said them anyway. Dr. Reeves studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. I am very pleased with your progress, Mrs. Porter. I am going to recommend your release. I walked out of Riverside Behavioral Health Center at 4:47 in the afternoon on a Thursday. 3 days after I had been committed against my will. I had a plan. My father was coming. Derek did not know. I knew everything. For 23 beautiful minutes, I thought I was going to be okay. Then I drove to my apartment. The locks had been changed. My belongings were in garbage bags on the lawn. There was an eviction notice on the door. Derek's name was on the lease. Mine was not. I stumbled to the curb and found another piece of my life destroyed. My car was gone, repossessed, co-signed loan. Derek had stopped making payments. I stood on what used to be my lawn, holding a garbage bag full of maternity clothes, and watched my entire life reduced to trash. I had no car, no home, no money. I was 7 months pregnant in an Ohio October with nowhere to go. And then my water broke. I do not remember much about what happened next. Tammy, my neighbor, heard me screaming and called 911. An ambulance came. Paramedics loaded me onto a stretcher while I begged them to call my father. The baby is coming too early, someone said. 6 weeks early. We need to move. Everything after that is fragments, bright lights, beeping machines, doctors shouting orders. I could not understand, and pain, so much pain. My daughter was born by emergency cesarean section at 11:42 that night. 5 pounds, 3 ounces, tiny and perfect, and fighting for every breath. They placed her on my chest for 11 minutes. 11 minutes of her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. 11 minutes of counting her eyelashes. 11 minutes of telling her I loved her, that I would protect her, that everything was going to be okay. Then Derek walked into my recovery room. Behind him was a lawyer I had never seen before. And behind the lawyer was Brittany Wells. Mrs. Porter, the lawyer said, given your recent psychiatric hospitalization and the emergency nature of the delivery, your husband has filed for temporary custody of the infant. No, I said. No, you cannot do this. Brittany stepped forward. Her belly was round with her own pregnancy, the pregnancy she had conceived while seducing my husband. Do not worry, Elena, she said. I will take good care of her. She reached for my daughter. I screamed. I tried to hold on. I tried to fight, but I had just had surgery. I was weak, bleeding, barely conscious. They pried my baby from my arms. The last thing I saw before the sedatives took hold was Brittany walking out of my hospital room with my daughter in her arms. She was wearing the $3,400 necklace. I woke up alone. The hospital room was empty. My arms were empty. The bassinet that should have held my daughter was empty. For a long moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw the custody papers on the bedside table. Emergency temporary custody granted to Derek Porter. Pending full hearing, I had lost my baby. I had lost everything. My father arrived 2 hours later. He looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. His face was gray, his eyes red-rimmed. Mel, he said, I am so sorry. By the time I got here, it was already done. They took her, I said. Brittany walked out of here with my daughter. I know. He sat down beside my bed and took my hand. But we are not giving up. The forensic accountant found the evidence. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, the whole scheme. We have enough to take them down. Then why does it feel like we have already lost? My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Because there is more bad news. I closed my eyes. Of course there is. Derek's lawyer filed a motion this morning. They are not just seeking custody. He handed me a document. I forced myself to read it. They are seeking to terminate your parental rights entirely. They are claiming you are a danger to the child based on your psychiatric history. I could not breathe. And there is more. The judge assigned to your case is Harold Reeves, Dr. Reeves' brother, the man whose father my father had put in prison. The walls were closing in. Every direction I turned, there was another Reeves, another enemy, another piece of a trap that had been building for years before I even knew it existed. How do I fight this? I asked. The judge is their family. The doctor is their family. Even if I prove everything, he will just dismiss it. My father squeezed my hand. We are not going to fight it in his court. Fraud, conspiracy, and RICO charges are federal. Judge Harold Reeves has no jurisdiction over federal crimes. But the custody hearing is in 3 days. I know. His jaw tightened. We need to move fast. They discharged me from the hospital the next morning. I had nowhere to go. My father paid for a motel room, $79 a night. Thin walls, cigarette burns on the carpet, a view of the highway. I sat on that motel bed and did the math. My baby was somewhere across the city with Brittany Reeves. My home was gone. My money was gone. My reputation was destroyed. The judge who would decide my daughter's fate was the brother of the man who had locked me in a psychiatric facility. Even with evidence, even with my father's contacts, Even with everything we knew, the hearing was in 3 days. There was no way to build a federal case that fast. I had nothing. I was nothing. For one terrible moment, I understood why the other women gave up. Why Laura Mitchell signed herself into permanent care. Why Angela Morrison vanished. It would be so easy to just stop fighting. And then I heard my daughter crying. Not really. She was miles away, in a crib I had never seen, being held by a woman who had stolen my husband like a handbag. But I heard her. And something in me that had been close to dying caught fire instead. I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. The moment when you have nothing left is not the moment to give up. It is the moment when you have nothing left to lose. They count on your despair. They plan for it. They know that most women, by this point, will crumble. That is exactly why you do not. Your survival becomes your resistance. Your refusal to disappear becomes your weapon. I had been fighting like a victim. Now I was going to fight like someone who had already lost everything, which meant I had nothing left to protect except the truth. I picked up the phone and called my father. Dad, I need you to tell me everything. Every victim, every detail, every piece of evidence you have. Mel, you need to rest. I will rest when I have my daughter back. Now tell me about the other women. You said Laura Mitchell is in a long-term care facility. Which one? There was a pause. Shady Pines? He said finally. Same place you used to work. I knew that facility. I knew the staff. I knew which nurses looked the other way and which ones actually cared about the patients. And I knew that Laura Mitchell had been locked in there for 4 years, diagnosed with severe delusional disorder, pumped full of medication every time she tried to tell someone the truth about what had happened to her. Tomorrow morning, I said, I am going to visit her. That is a bad idea. Dad, I am out of good ideas. I am working with what I have left. What do you think she can tell you that we do not already know? I do not know yet, but you said the federal case needs a pattern. It needs witnesses. It needs women who can testify about what happened to them. She has been institutionalized for 4 years. No one will believe her. They did not believe me either. I stared out the motel window at the highway, watching headlights blur through the darkness. But I am still here, and I am still fighting. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. There is my girl. It was the first time he had sounded proud of me in 17 years. Shady Pines Nursing Home looked exactly the same as it had when I worked there. Same beige walls, same fluorescent lights, same smell of antiseptic and old age. I signed in at the front desk using my maiden name. The receptionist did not recognize me. I am here to visit Laura Mitchell, I said. She checked her computer. Are you family? Old friend. Room 217. Second floor, turn left. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding. I did not know what I was going to find. I did not know if Laura would even be able to talk to me, but I had to try. Room 217 was at the end of a long hallway. The door was open. Inside, a woman sat in a wheelchair by the window, staring at nothing. She was thin, too thin. Her hair was gray and brittle, though she could not have been more than 40. Her eyes were vacant, the eyes of someone who had spent years being told she was crazy until she started to believe it. Laura, I said softly. She turned her head slowly, looked at me, and something flickered in those vacant eyes. You are Derek's new wife, she said. Babe, soup, she said. Not a question. How did you know? Because he was mine first, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me guess. The pregnancy test in the gym bag, the secret apartment, the emergency commitment. I sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. How long have you been here? 4 years? 3 months? 11 days. She looked back at the window. They upped my medication every time I tried to tell someone the truth. After a while, I stopped trying. Laura, I took her hand. What if I told you I could get you out? She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were clearer than I had expected, sharper. There is something you do not know about Derek, she said. Something none of us knew until it was too late. What? He is not the one running this. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Brittany is not just his girlfriend. She is not even really Dr. Reeves's daughter. Then who is she? She is his wife. The room seemed to tilt. What? They got married 6 years ago. Different state, different names? They have been running this con together ever since. Brittany finds the marks. Derek reels them in. Dr. Reeves locks up the wives. Judge Reeves handles any legal complications. And then they move on to the next victim. But Derek thinks, I started. Derek thinks he is special. Laura shook her head. They all do. The husbands they recruit, they think Brittany loves them. They think they are partners. But once the con is done, once they have the baby and the money, the husband becomes a liability. What happens to them? The husband before me? The one who helped them destroy my life? Laura's voice went flat. He died in a car accident 6 months after my case was closed. Single vehicle. No witnesses. My stomach turned. They do not leave loose ends, Laura said. Derek is going to end up just like the others, and so will you, unless you stop them. I sat with that information for a long moment. Derek was a monster. He had destroyed my life. He had helped them take my baby. But he was also a useful idiot who was about to be murdered by the woman he thought loved him. Part of me, a small, dark part that I am not proud of, thought maybe I should let it happen. But my daughter would grow up in that house, with those people, thinking Brittany was her mother. I could not let her be raised by murderers, even if it meant saving the man who had ruined my life. Laura, I said, would you be willing to testify? If we could get you out of here, if we could prove what they did, would you tell a court what you told me? She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. I have been waiting 4 years for someone to ask me that question. I spent the rest of the day making phone calls. My father connected me with Marcus Webb, a journalist who had been investigating psychiatric abuse for 3 years. He had heard rumors about Riverside Behavioral Health Center, but he had never been able to prove anything, until now. Patricia Coleman was a nurse who had worked at Riverside until she was fired for reporting concerns about Dr. Reeves. She had kept copies of patient files, dates, names, patterns. Sandra Blake was a victim from 2018, the first one we knew about. She had rebuilt her life, but she had never stopped wanting revenge. And then there was my father's old colleague, Judge Catherine O'Brien, federal bench, clean as a whistle, and very, very angry about what the Reeves family had been doing in her state. One by one, the pieces were coming together. But the custody hearing was in 2 days. We did not have enough time to build a federal case. We did not have enough time to get warrants, to make arrests, to stop them through official channels. We needed another way. We needed Derek. I found him at a bar at 10:30 that night, the same bar where we had our first date 4 years ago. He was alone, nursing a whiskey, staring at his phone. He looked up when I sat down across from him. His face went pale. Mel? How did you find me? I always knew where to find you, Derek. I just stopped looking. Listen, he said, his voice dropping. I know how this looks, but Brittany said, she said it would be better for everyone. She said you were unstable, that the baby needed. She is going to kill you. He stopped talking. I slid a folder across the table. Photographs, death certificates, news articles about car accidents and unexpected heart attacks. There have been 4 husbands before you. I kept my voice calm. They all helped Brittany destroy their wives. They all thought they were special. and they all died within 6 months of the case being closed. Derek stared at the folder. His hands were shaking. This cannot be real. Brittany is married to Dr. Reeves. I watched his face crumple. She has been married to him for 6 years. You are not her partner, Derek. You are her employee. And when you are no longer useful, you will be disposed of just like the others. He read the documents in silence. Then he looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What do you want? I want you to help me take them down. I held his gaze. Wear a wire. Get Brittany and Dr. Reeves on tape admitting what they have done. Testify against them in federal court. They will kill me. They are going to kill you anyway. I leaned forward. This way, you might survive. And maybe, just maybe, you might start to make up for what you did to me. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he threw up in the bar's decorative plant pot. There is something deeply satisfying about watching the man who destroyed your life vomit into decorative shrubbery. I am not proud of how long I let him heave before offering him a napkin. Okay? I am a little proud. Derek agreed to wear the wire. My father's contacts provided the equipment. A tiny microphone, no bigger than a button, sewn into the collar of Derek's jacket. A receiver that would pick up everything within 30 feet. The meeting was set for the next morning. Derek was supposed to go to Brittany's condo to discuss the custody hearing. All he had to do was get her talking. I waited in a van parked 2 blocks away, listening through headphones. My hands clenched so tight my fingernails left marks in my palms. For the first 20 minutes, everything went according to plan. Hey baby, Brittany said. Her voice was honey-sweet through the microphone. How are you holding up? I am worried, Derek said. His voice was stiff, rehearsed. What if Melissa tries something at the hearing? Brittany laughed. What can she try? The judge's family. The evidence is airtight. She has no money, no lawyer, no support. By this time next week, her parental rights will be terminated and the baby will be ours. Ours, not mine, ours. What about after? Derek asked. I mean, once the case is closed, what happens then? Then we disappear. Start fresh somewhere new. Just like we always do. Just like we always do. My father wrote something down. We need her to be more specific. Derek pressed harder. What about the other husbands? The ones before me? What happened to them? There was a pause. A long one. Why are you asking about them? Brittany's voice had changed. Sharper. Suspicious. I want to know what to expect. Derek was sweating. I could hear it in his voice. You said we were partners. I want to make sure we are on the same page. Another pause. Then Brittany said something that made my blood freeze. Take off your jacket. What? Take off your jacket. Now. The next 30 seconds were chaos. We heard Derek protest. We heard Brittany scream that she knew something was wrong. We heard the sound of fabric tearing. Then we heard her laughing. You stupid, stupid man, she said. Did you think I would not check? Did you think I would not know? The line went dead. No, I said. No, no, no. She found the wire. My father's face was grim. We need to move. Now. But it was already too late. Within the hour, Derek was in jail. Brittany had called 911, claiming that Derek had attacked her and threatened her pregnancy. The police found him outside her building trying to run. They arrested him on the spot. She also filed an emergency motion with the court. The custody hearing was moved up to tomorrow morning. Judge Harold Reeves, court. And she was requesting that my parental rights be terminated immediately, based on my psychiatric history and Derek's violent outburst. She was going to take everything before the federal case could even be filed. I sat in my father's car outside the county courthouse and stared at the building where my daughter's fate would be decided. We have the recordings. From the wire, I said. Can we use them? Nothing incriminating. My father shook his head. She was suspicious from the start. All we have is her saying things will work out, and asking Derek about the other husbands. What about Laura? The other victims? They can testify, but not tomorrow. It takes time to assemble witnesses, to file the right paperwork, to build a case that will stick. So, what do we do? I was hoping you would not ask that. He was quiet for a moment. There is one option, but it is risky. I am out of safe options. We go to the hearing, we present what evidence we have, and we pray that something happens that changes the game. That is not a plan. That is hope. Sometimes, hope is all you have left. I thought about my daughter, 3 weeks old, tiny and perfect, and fighting for her life in a crib that belonged to the woman who had stolen her. Okay, I said, we go to the hearing, and we pray. The Franklin County Family Courthouse was an imposing building of gray stone and narrow windows. It looked like a place where hope went to die. I walked through the security checkpoint at 8:45 in the morning. My father walked beside me. My hands were shaking. We had nothing. No legal representation, no smoking gun evidence, no reason to believe that anything would go differently than Brittany had planned. But we showed up anyway, because sometimes showing up is the only thing you can do. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled walls, a judge's bench that seemed impossibly high, American flag in the corner. Brittany sat at the plaintiff's table with an expensive-looking lawyer. She was holding my daughter, playing the perfect mother. Dr. Nathan Reeves sat in the gallery behind her, looking smug. Derek's chair was empty. He was still in jail. Judge Harold Reeves entered at 9 o'clock sharp. He was older than his brother, gray-haired, cold-eyed. He did not look at me once. We are here for the matter of Porter versus Porter, he said. Emergency motion for termination of parental rights. Counsel, you may begin. Brittany's lawyer stood, a polished man in a $3,000 suit. Your Honor, the respondent in this case has a documented history of psychiatric instability. She was involuntarily committed just weeks before giving birth. Since then, she has harassed my client, made baseless accusations, and attempted to involve her estranged father, who has his own troubled history with this court. I watched Judge Reeves nod along. His mind was already made up. We are seeking immediate termination of parental rights, the lawyer continued, to protect the child from further trauma and ensure a stable home environment. Judge Reeves looked at me for the first time. Do you have representation, Mrs. Porter? No, Your Honor. Do you wish to speak on your own behalf? I stood. My legs felt like water. Your Honor, I said, everything that man just told you is a lie. I was committed against my will based on fabricated evidence. My husband and his girlfriend have been running a scheme that has destroyed at least 4 other women before me. Dr. Nathan Reeves, who is sitting in this courtroom, is not just a psychiatrist. He is married to Brittany Wells. They have been working together to steal children and assets for years. Judge Reeves' face did not change. Do you have evidence of these claims? I have testimony from other victims. I have documentation from a nurse who was fired for reporting concerns. I have. Do you have evidence, Mrs. Porter? Or do you have accusations? I felt my hope crumbling. I have the truth, I said. The truth. Judge Reeves looked at me with something close to pity. In my experience, Mrs. Porter, the truth is whatever the evidence supports. And the evidence in this case supports my ruling. He lifted his gavel. And then the courtroom doors opened. 4 women walked in. Laura Mitchell, thin and fragile, but standing on her own 2 feet for the first time in 4 years. Mary Sanders, her head held high despite everything she had been through. Angela Morrison, the woman who had disappeared, alive and ready to tell her story. Sandra Blake, the first victim, leading them all. And behind them, Marcus Webb from the Tribune, flanked by 2 federal marshals. Judge Reeves went pale. "Your Honor," Marcus Webb said, his voice carrying through the courtroom, "the Tribune published an investigative report this morning detailing a decade-long conspiracy involving Dr. Nathan Reeves, his wife Brittany Reeves, and multiple members of the Reeves family, including yourself." Federal marshals stepped forward. They had warrants. They had badges. They had the full weight of the United States government behind them. "Harold Reeves," one of them said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. This is outrageous." Judge Reeves stood, his face red with anger. "This is my courtroom. Not anymore," my father said. He stepped forward from the gallery. He had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. The next few minutes were chaos. Dr. Nathan Reeves tried to slip out the back. Federal marshals stopped him at the door. Brittany tried to run with my daughter. She made it 3 steps before a social worker blocked her path. "Take the baby." Her voice was shrill. "Take her and go. We can still." "Ma'am," the social worker said calmly, "I am going to need you to hand over the child." Brittany looked around wildly, at the marshals, at the cameras, at the ruins of everything she had built. Then she looked at me. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "No," I said. "I just refused to disappear." They handcuffed her in the courtroom. She was still screaming about her rights when they led her away. And then a social worker was walking toward me, with my daughter in her arms. "Ms. Porter?" She smiled. "I believe this belongs to you." I took my baby for the first time in 17 days. She was so small, so perfect. She looked up at me, with eyes that were finally learning to focus. And I said the only thing I could say. "Hi, baby. I am your mom. Sorry I am late." 6 months later, I was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Old habits, I guess. When you have spent months expecting the worst, it takes a while to believe that the worst might actually be over. But it was over. Brittany Reeves was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. RICO charges, fraud, conspiracy. The judge called her scheme one of the most calculated patterns of predatory behavior he had ever seen. Dr. Nathan Reeves got 25 years. Fraud, false imprisonment, conspiracy to commit murder. They found evidence linking him to 3 suspicious deaths, men who had served their purpose and been disposed of. Judge Harold Reeves was disbarred and sentenced to 10 years. He cried on the stand. I did not feel sorry for him. Jenna lost her nursing license and got 2 years probation. She tried to write me a letter apologizing. I threw it away unread. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. They can only be survived. Derek cooperated fully with the federal investigation. He testified against everyone. He provided documents, recordings, everything he had. The prosecutors offered him immunity in exchange for his testimony. I was not happy about it, but I understood it. People ask me if I forgave Derek. Forgiveness suggests I still think about him enough to have feelings. I do not. He moved back to his hometown in Indiana. He sends child support every month. The check arrives on the 15th like clockwork. That is all he is to me now. A check on the 15th. That is all he will ever be. The other women are doing better. Not perfect, not healed, but better. Laura Mitchell was released from Shady Pines after my father's team presented evidence that she had been wrongfully committed. She is living with her sister now, relearning how to be a person outside of institutional walls. Mary Sanders had her fraud conviction overturned. She got her children back. The first time she hugged them, she cried for 3 hours straight. Angela Morrison turned out to have been living under a false name in Wisconsin, too afraid to come forward. When she heard that Brittany had been arrested, she called Marcus Webb and told him everything. Sandra Blake started a nonprofit for survivors of psychiatric abuse. She asked me to join the board. I said yes. My father and I are rebuilding our relationship. It is slow. It is awkward. 17 years of silence cannot be erased overnight. But we are trying. He comes over for dinner every Sunday. He brings wine that is too expensive and toys for Hope that she is too young to play with. Last week, he watched her take her first steps while I recorded it on my phone. She fell down twice. She looked offended by gravity. Then she tried again. That is my girl, I told her. We do not stay down in this family. My father wiped his eyes and pretended he had allergies. I pretended to believe him. As for me, I am okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. I still have nightmares about the psychiatric hold. I still startle when anyone raises their voice. I still check the locks 3 times before bed. I go to therapy twice a week. My therapist asked me last week if I have learned to trust again. I told her I trust my father, I trust my daughter. And I trust that my emergency bag is packed by the front door just in case. She said, that is not really the same as trusting. I said, maybe not. But my bag has snacks now. That is progress. She did not laugh, but I did. My daughter's name is Hope. I did not name her that because I am optimistic. I named her that because hope was the only thing I had left when everything else was gone. Hope that I would survive. Hope that I would find her. Hope that someday, somehow, the truth would come out. And it did. She is 6 months old now. She laughs when I tickle her feet. She reaches for my face when I pick her up in the morning. She has no idea what I went through to keep her. I hope she never has to know. I hope her life is simple and safe and free from the monsters I had to fight. But if it is not, I will teach her what I know. I will show her how to find patterns in lies. I will explain why documentation matters. I will make sure she understands that trusting someone does not mean being blind to who they really are. And I will tell her this story, not to scare her, but to show her that survival is possible, that the darkest moments are not the end, that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who underestimate you, and that the woman who refuses to disappear becomes the one they never saw coming. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in April when the text message arrived. Hope and I were at the park near our apartment. She had just learned to walk and was toddle chasing pigeons with the determination of a tiny, adorable predator. My father sat on a nearby bench, pretending to read a newspaper, but actually watching his granddaughter with tears in his eyes. For the first time in over a year, I felt something I had almost forgotten existed. Peace. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I get spam calls all the time. Who doesn't? But something made me look. It was a photo of me at the park, taken from somewhere nearby, minutes ago. The caption read, "You destroyed my family. Your father destroyed my grandfather." Hope is such a pretty name. It would be a shame if something happened to it. Below the text was a symbol I recognized from the court documents, the Reeves family crest. My blood turned to ice. I looked up, scanning the park. Families on picnic blankets, children on the playground, dog walkers, joggers. Anyone could have taken that photo. Anyone could be watching. My father saw my face and was on his feet immediately. "Mel? What is it?" I showed him the phone. His jaw tightened. The color drained from his face. "Get Hope," he said quietly. "We are leaving. Now." I scooped up my daughter, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Dad?" I said as we hurried toward his car. "How many Reeves are there?" He did not answer. That scared me more than the text message. We did not go back to my apartment. My father drove us to a safe house, a place he had used during his prosecutor days. Small, anonymous, impossible to find unless you knew exactly where to look. "Talk to me," I said, once we were inside. Who sent that message? He was quiet for a long moment. Nathan Reeves had a son, he finally said, from his first marriage, before Brittany. A son? His name is Michael. He was 18 when I put his grandfather in prison. 20 when his father started the scheme with Brittany. Did he know about what they were doing? I do not know. He was estranged from the family, lived out of state. We never found any evidence connecting him to the conspiracy, but now he is back. It looks that way. I held Hope tighter. She squirmed, confused by my grip, not understanding why her mother was suddenly so afraid. What do we do? The same thing we did before. My father's eyes were hard. We gather evidence. We build a case. We take him down. And in the meantime, we are careful. We do not take chances. And we remember that they already lost once. They almost destroyed me. Almost is the important word. He looked at me, at hope, at the life I had rebuilt, from the ashes of everything they had burned. They came at you with everything they had, and you survived. You won. And now there is another one. There will always be another one, Mel. My father's voice was tired, but so will there always be us. I thought about that for a moment, about the years of silence between us, about everything he had sacrificed to protect me, about everything I had survived to protect my daughter. We are not victims, I said slowly. Not anymore. No. He almost smiled. We are not. I spent the next week looking over my shoulder. Every stranger on the street could be Michael Reeves. Every car that passed too slowly could be surveillance. Every bump in the night could be someone coming to finish what his family started. But I did not run. I did not hide. I kept living my life. I took Hope to her doctor's appointments. I went to my therapy sessions. I had dinner with Sandra Blake and the other survivors. And I started preparing. I updated my documentation. I set up security cameras. I made sure multiple people knew my routines, my schedule, my emergency contacts. If Michael Reeves wanted to come for me, he would find a woman who was ready, not a victim waiting to be destroyed, but a survivor who had already beaten the worst his family could throw at her. And this time, I would not be caught off guard. 3 weeks after the text message, I got another one. Same unknown number, same cold dread in my stomach. But this time, the message was different. It said, "I am not my father." I stared at the screen. Then another message came through. "I know what they did. I know what you went through. I have been investigating my own family for 2 years trying to find enough evidence to bring them down." And another. "You beat me to it. Thank you." My hands were shaking as I typed back. "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Michael Reeves. And I am not your enemy," I called my father. 20 minutes later, we were on a video call with a man I had never seen before. Late 20s, dark hair, eyes that looked nothing like his father's. He looked tired, haunted, like someone who had been carrying a heavy weight for a very long time. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. "You should not," he said, "not yet." "But I can prove what I am saying." He shared his screen. Documents, emails, bank records, evidence he had been gathering for years, evidence against his own family. "I walked away when I was 18, he said. "I knew something was wrong. I just did not know how wrong. When I found out what they were doing, I started investigating, but I could never get enough. They were too careful. Then they went after you." His eyes met mine through the screen. "I was going to reach out, to warn you, but by the time I had worked up the courage, you had already beaten them. That does not explain the threatening text." Michael looked away. "That was a mistake. I was angry, scared. I did not know if you would believe me if I approached directly. I thought, I do not know what I thought, that I could scare you into talking to me. You thought wrong. I know." He swallowed. "I am sorry. It was stupid and cruel, and I should never have done it." I studied his face. looking for deception, looking for some sign that this was another trap. But all I saw was a man who was deeply, profoundly ashamed. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because they are not all in prison," he said. "There are others, family members who helped, associates who profited, people who got away because we did not know about them." His voice hardened. "I want to finish what you started. I want to burn down every piece of what my family built, and I want to do it before they can hurt anyone else." I looked at my father. He looked at me. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think everyone deserves a chance to do the right thing," he said slowly, "even a Reeves." Michael flinched at that, but he did not argue. I thought about everything I had been through, the betrayal, the loss, the long climb back to something like a normal life. And I thought about the women who might still be out there, the ones Michael's family had not gotten to yet, the ones who could still be saved. "Okay," I said finally, "I am listening." 18 months later, I stood in a federal courtroom and watched 3 more members of the Reeves network be sentenced to prison. Associates, enablers, people who had helped hide money, forge documents, and cover up crimes. People who had thought they would never be caught. Michael Reeves sat in the witness stand and testified against every single one of them. It had not been easy. Trusting the son of the man who had tried to destroy me went against every instinct I had. But Michael had proven himself. Over and over, he had provided evidence. He had worn wires. He had testified in 3 separate trials. He had given up everything to make things right. I did not forgive his family. I never would. But I had learned that people are not always defined by where they come from. Sometimes they are defined by what they choose to become. After the sentencing, we gathered at Sandra Blake's house for a celebration. All of us. Laura Mitchell, healthy now, working part-time at a library, and rebuilding her life one day at a time. Mary Sanders, reunited with her children, training to become a victim's advocate. Angela Morrison, writing a book about her experience that was already getting attention from major publishers. My father, older and grayer, but finally at peace with the man he had been and the man he had become. Marcus Webb, the journalist whose investigation had blown everything wide open, already working on his next expose. Patricia Coleman, the nurse whose conscience had cost her job, but ultimately helped save us all. Michael Reeves, the man who had chosen family loyalty over family blood. And me, Melissa Porter, survivor, fighter, mother. Hope ran circles around the living room, 2 years old now, and fearless in the way that only toddlers can be. My father chased her, making monster sounds that sent her into fits of giggles. I watched them and felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Whole. Sandra raised a glass. "To the women who refuse to disappear," she said. We all raised our glasses. To the ones who refuse to disappear. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat on my front porch and watched the stars come out. Hope was asleep in her crib. The house was quiet. My emergency bag was still by the door, but these days it felt less like a necessity and more like a reminder of who I had been, a reminder of what I had survived, a reminder that I would never be that vulnerable again. I thought about the woman I was before all of this, the woman who trusted too easily, the woman who did not see the walls closing in until it was almost too late. She was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who had learned the hardest way possible that survival is not a gift. It is a choice you make every single day. If you are listening to this story and you recognized something in it, if you are living with someone who makes you doubt your own reality, if you are watching your support system disappear one person at a time, if you feel like you are slowly being erased, I need you to hear me. You are not crazy. You are not alone, and you can survive this. Trust your instincts, but verify with evidence. Document everything before you confront. Open accounts your partner does not know about. Find people outside your shared circle. Someone he does not know. Someone he cannot reach. And remember this: the moment when you have nothing left is not the moment to give up. It is the moment when you have nothing left to lose. They count on your despair. They plan for it. They know that most women will crumble. That is exactly why you do not. Your survival becomes your resistance. Your refusal to disappear becomes your weapon. I was a woman who lost everything: my husband, my home, my money, my baby, my sanity, and I got it all back. Not because someone saved me, but because I refused to stay down. So can you. Below this video, you will find resources for domestic abuse hotlines, financial planning guides, and information about psychiatric abuse. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. You might save their life. And if you want to know what happens next, if you want to follow Hope's story as she grows up, if you want to see what Michael Reeves uncovers as he continues to dismantle what his family built, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is not really over. It is just beginning. My name is Melissa Porter. I survived a husband who tried to steal my baby. I survived a psychiatrist who tried to steal my sanity. I survived a judge who tried to steal my future. And I am still here, still standing, still fighting. If you are out there right now, in the dark, wondering if you can make it through, let me be your proof. You can. You will. And when you do, you will be stronger than you ever imagined possible. Goodbye for now. Stay safe. And remember, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are listening from today. I read every single one, and your stories remind me why I tell these. And if this channel has ever helped you feel less alone, that subscribe button is your way of joining a community of survivors who refuse to stay silent. One click. That is all it takes. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the house of cards I called my marriage. Closing disclaimer. Thank you for staying until the end. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and genuine value to your life. Every story we create is crafted with intention, designed not just to entertain, but to inform, empower, and protect. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might save. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and never stop fighting for yourself. Goodbye for now.